Minutes are live. We are live. This is Senate Finance. We are back. And we are going through 9:55, and this we're just starting to do a look at some of the finance provisions. This is school construction, and that's where there's an overlap. The bill is still in education. They are planning to get it out soon over here. But I know this is one they're looking at, so we thought we'd start taking a look at it.
For the record, Gilbert Campbell, Deputy Secretary of Education and Chief of Operations. Thank you for inviting the agency in. You're actually the first committee that's invited us in to provide any testimony on H95. So it is concerning that it might be exiting Senate Education without us ever having provided any feedback, including over in the House. So I really appreciated Ledge Council's walkthrough of this fairly complicated section. Because we do have Treasury here today, there are other folks within the administration, like Agency of Administration and Finance and Management, that I think would want to hear from around the use of the state capital bonding. So I'm not going to speak to that. I'm specifically going to speak to sort of three underlying concerns that I have with this section of the bill as drafted. So the first thing that I want to do is sort of check where we are now in this process. So I want to remind us, and Ledge Council did as well, we really started this work with Act 72 in 2021. It was an acknowledgement of a need to lay the foundations for future state construction aid. And it required the agency to do the facilities condition assessment, which gave those real bummer results that we saw, which is the 6 billion, which is probably an underestimation of the actual need. And then we did some really thoughtful work with the task force, which resulted in the legislative working group. And we are largely building from the original construction aid plan with improvements that have been made by our partners over in Rhode Island. So we're really looking at the Rhode Island model and the success that they've had in making and sort of modernizing our own program. So thus far, we've been incredibly deliberate in this work. And we all are feeling the pressure of this growing kind of hole of deferred maintenance. And we understand a real desire and share the desire to move forward and really start to get our feet under us. I'm going to share with you my concern about this language as drafted is it's undoing all of that really good planning work. And it's doing three things that I said are sort of concerning. We've laid out a very clear plan for implementation that ensures that we have expertise, resources, rules, the grants for the facilities master plan, which are required to be eligible. We haven't funded yet. You all created the grant program, but it's a shell. There's no money in there. So our districts do not have district level facilities master planning, which is an eligibility criteria, rulemaking, and then you would begin to have kind of the application come in. This language flips that timeline. The other major concern that I have, and I think that Ledge Council did an excellent job of pointing this out, is the intent language around the state aid for school construction here is entirely wrapped up in the policy decision, which is the formation of CSAs and voluntary district mergers over a many year process. So what we're now being asked to do is to build a very thoughtful and deliberate state aid for school construction to ensure that we have limited resources going to the right investments while we're actually still trying to figure out what the system looks like. And we're trying to use state aid for school construction to incentivize mergers, voluntary mergers. We've actually tried to do this before in our original state aid for school construction. And I believe we had exactly one project that took advantage of that and resulted in a small district merger. So we've been here before. This isn't a carrot that's worked, not to say that it wouldn't now, but I think critically, how are you wanting the state to come up with those really key priority criteria and bonus criteria absent an understanding of where the system is heading? So we had a very clear, we collectively have created a very clear and deliberate implementation plan that is at risk of being done at this point. And then the third thing I wanted to signal is that, and I can speak to this sort of briefly, but there's a really big requirement being put on the advisory board that I would really caution against. This is a very part-time, meets 6 times a year, volunteer advisory board, all of whom have other jobs that are being asked to take on, which is in most cases a multi-year extensive planning process that you would put significant resources towards. I don't think that it's a fair ask of them, and I don't think that they can achieve it successfully. So I just wanted to point that out. I think it's a misalignment of roles and responsibilities, and they're not going to be successful, and particularly by December of next year. So I can run through pretty quickly some of the specifics. If you want to, I shared a slide deck and some very brief written testimony. But if we go to on the slide deck, the AOE recommended implementation path, I think it's slide 3.
Wait, just.
Sure.
Can we fix
Oh, yeah, my laptop died while we were using,
Because there are 2 things.
but it was shared. I think it's-
Because while we're waiting, I think this group, this advisory group in Rhode Island, I think those are paid positions, aren't they? Like it's almost like a full-time job. Yeah.
Yeah. And our advisory board, and I have actually have great admiration for all of the people on that advisory board, but they're made up of, folks within the industry, folks within school districts. It's again, sort of not a professional organization that you would ask to do this level of study and work. As you were saying, trying to identify, to answer your question, there is not a statutory definition of regional and comprehensive high schools. We were looking into this the other day. Comprehensive high schools have a specific definition of comprehensive. It's type C, yeah. But to identify where those buildings should be located to do site reviews, you have to do like Act 250 environmental analysis. I mean, it's just not achievable. So, okay. So I just want to sort of revisit what our recommended implementation path was. And this was actually laid out both sort of last year in testimony that we provided prior to the Act 73 implementation, and then in the report that Ledge Council referenced, which we submitted, called the Section 9 of Act 73 report, very like enticing title there. But we were specifically asked to provide implementation plan and what are the resources that the AOE would need to do that. And that plan, that report was submitted to the legislature in December of last year. We provided testimony to House Ways and Means on that plan. So they had that information when this was drafted. So in year 1, we're talking about building the expertise and capacity. So we need to stand up the state aid for school construction division.
Okay, those were the positions.
It's the 4 positions, yeah, that were identified. So that was great. That was taken right from our report. There is a timing misalignment there. Those key staff are then the ones who are going to do the rulemaking, and the rulemaking is not just making a couple of minor tweaks. And updating our capital outlay funding formula is not a minor task. It's a research project that's looking at, it's really important that we get this as right as we can, because it is in fact the maximum square footage that the state will be on the hook for paying for in an approved construction project. So it's an important number, right? There's a minimum and a maximum. And that is, what that is saying is we are indicating what the state considers a responsibly built project, right? And we need to modernize our capital outlay funding formula. The last time it was done was in 2002 or 2003, and does not reflect what we would consider sort of modern education spaces. And every state has a different cost. So this is not something that you would do on them. And it's not something that we could turn on in a week. It's actually a pretty intensive research project, and you actually want to be working with the field to understand what are their end specs, their end specifications for their use of space. Senator Jim.
Should we wait till she's done, or do you want questions?
Well, have you got it just clarification?
Well,
on
I guess the timing issue with the staff, the staff that, or the report you submitted in December of 2025 included, right, was that December 25, included staffing recommendations?
Yes.
Did you guys request those in your budget request?
No, because we've always been really clear that we think that we needed to understand what the system looked like, and then you would do your staging for school construction. So there was an order of operations that.
Well, there's a whole bunch of chickens and eggs on everything that we're doing. So I'm just wondering, because it seems like you need the staff to be able to do the COGS. Is that what you're calling
Yeah, the
it?
clock.
And the rulemaking
The
and
instruction guide, the technical
Exactly.
assistance,
all of that stuff.
all those things.
But now we literally just passed the budget first try, first go round now this morning. So it feels like we should give you the staff so you can get stuff started next year. Even if you don't know what the school districts are going to look like, you can still start doing the
Yeah.
rulemaking. You can still start standing up the program.
Yeah.
So that when things are changed, you will be ready to go.
Yeah,
I
I agree with you on chickens and eggs, right? So I think when we were drafting that report, we were still operating under the implementation of Act 73 of the past, which would have resulted in.
Right. I mean, that's totally fair. Yes,
Right.
lots of chickens and eggs. So,
Yeah,
but now we are where we are. And it seems like in order to get going on all of this, you guys need at least a couple staff, maybe even just two of them or something to get something going.
we would definitely need staff, and at minimum, I would strongly encourage that we don't have requirements for us to do work for which we don't have staff.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally fair. But I also think I don't know, I want to get going on this because this is sort of a linchpin of like a lot of the stuff that's happening.
Let's get through this.
Yeah. So, I did also kind of mention this, but I'll sort of point this out again. One of the basic eligibility criteria to receive state aid for school construction is that the districts must have a district level facilities master plan. That is not a light touch document. That takes time and it takes resources, and it should be comprehensive, looking across their entire building portfolio, helpful if they knew what their future state was going to look like, so that they can identify which buildings they're going to be investing in. You did create a grant. There is no money for it. So at this point in time, I don't know of a district that has a district facilities master plan. So I'm not sure. You have for all of your buildings?
I thought we did.
With ed specs, I think is actually the missing piece. right?
HCSD had one, but they're redoing it right
Yeah,
now.
that's
So
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
there are districts that have them that are just there.
Yeah, so they might need to be updated. They might need to include ed specs. Most of them don't, and it's a requirement. So I just, again, a little bit of I want to signal before we move forward, we collectively put an eligibility criteria in there that I'm not sure that most districts could meet. So another step would be to fund the grant program and get that going. All right, so then in year two, so in year one, when we have the staff, then we'd be getting those staff on board, developing, engaging in rulemaking and prioritization criteria. So that would carry us into 26, 27. Then in year two, we can launch the program, open applications, provide district technical assistance, and begin project review and approvals. And then in year three, we would be releasing construction aid. So whatever those years are, year one, year two, year three. Okay. And then I'll sort of briefly just lay out, because Ledge Council did a very good job of this, but I put it in the handy dandy slide there. The implementation path that 955 is contemplating is in year one, we've got system changes beginning to take effect. We have sort of the establishment of CISAs, the facilitators hired for CISA and district mergers. So we're trying to build the system while we're going, while the agency is expected to begin pretty extensive rulemaking, absent the staff to do so. And then by March of 2027, I agree with Ledge Council, that's incredibly aggressive timeline, particularly without resources, even with resources, that's really aggressive timeline. And program development. And I want to be clear, rulemaking is not just kind of scratching a few lines out and making updates. There's an entire construction guide that goes with this. And we will certainly borrow homework from folks that are doing this work well. I'm not about recreating the wheel, but there is some work to be done there. Then in July of 27 is when the positions would be made available. So I know you all are hearing me, but I'm going to emphasize this. I have 0 bodies in the Agency of Education that can do this work right now. So I know we love Bob Donahue. He actually has a full-time job. And one of his key priorities, and you all will be saying to me, if we want Bob to do rulemaking, I would say, okay, Bob is going to put down some really critical work in school safety and security. That is his priority. So I want to just be very clear with you. That is what I would be asking you to do.
Okay,
with that.
but the authorization for employees in school construction, can you use those employees to do this work? We've given it, we've given you, or the budget did. I assume you talked to the budget people.
No, it's not in our FY 27 budget. We were asked
These
to,
positions are not.
they're not.
I thought we put 4 positions into
It
it.
starts FY 28.
8.
Yeah.
28.
Right.
Yeah, so we have a timeline.
Yeah,
It's starting after the work.
I mean, there might be other positions in the budget for AOE, but they're not the school construction positions.
No, they're the district support team, like a transformation. So
Yeah.
one of those, if I can get it, would be fantastic. But again, it's not this job, it's a different hire. I'm very resourceful, but I just want to be clear about like how we need to be deliberate about this. One of those positions is a facilities integration specialist, just like I have a business operations integration specialist. This is our interface between, merging districts, setting up the new system, and the Agency of Education. They're really like our kind of district quality folks. So different skill set.
The budget's been through 2 appropriations committees. How did it get this messed up?
We were never asked, like we were never able to come in and provide testimony.
On this particular, I mean, you were in the appropriate committees, right?
On the FY 27 budget.
Yeah.
Okay, but
And this was not, 955 was not, written as such.
if you need,
But the governor didn't ask for this.
the governor didn't ask for it either, and
We do it
staffing agency.
If we're doing that, could we add our literacy money back in, please? If I have to pick priorities,
Yeah.
I'm sure that we get literacy money back.
Thank you, Roger. There was money in the budget for the AOE for transformation. And I don't remember the number. I want to say $1.5 million, but that seems really low.
So we had originally requested for ed transformation.
Yeah,
We had requested $4 million. We ended up, money was put off for different entities to do work around that. The agency ended up with 2.8 million, which is inclusive of the 5 ed transformation
okay.
positions as limited service.
Okay.
We weren't able to hire those positions because they're 8-month positions and nobody wanted.
Right.
I have one person who's coming on who's incredible.
That doesn't sound like the most highly skilled.
No, we really want folks from the field, right? And they're not going to leave their district jobs for an 8-month position.
No.
In the budget, you have made those permanent. We very much appreciate that. What remained is about 2.1 million, which we have been moving forward with as directed by you all. So it was for, specifically for contracted services around, special education, high quality instructional materials, curriculum, early warning systems. We are well underway with all of that work.
So none of these positions could come out of that money.
And it's one-time money. So it's, yeah.
Okay.
So this proposal that's in H 955, I think was put in by Ways and Means, right? You were invited into Ways and Means you were not invited into the Ways and Means to testify?
Yeah. We were invited into Ways and Means to testify specifically on the excess spending threshold, and then we were asked, with due respect, I actually have the emails where we asked for clarification, what are we being asked to provide testimony on? We were specifically told the excess spending threshold in S-260. When we walked in the room, we were asked to provide testimony. And have the email receipt, so I understand that you're shaking your head no, but that's not actually factual, but.
Okay, well, I mean, it seems like this proposal's been, in the building for a while, I mean, I do think the chicken and egg thing.
But also, Senator
Like-
Harder, you submitted letters to House
Okay.
Appropriations, to House Ways and Means with our response to H 955. So we did submit written testimony.
Yeah, I mean, it just would be a shame to lose a whole year on trying to get this stuff moved forward. But I totally understand that you can't do stuff if you don't have staff for it. And so I'm just trying to figure out how do we get you at least a couple positions, even if we can't get you 4, maybe 2.
Yeah, I think there's also, I would love for us to be able to move forward on some of the steps for state aid for school construction. I don't want to lose track of the ways in which this drafted in 955 is entirely attached to the policy decisions in 955, which we fundamentally disagree with as the right path forward for ed transformation. So this is, as Ledge Council pointed out, the intent language is to use state aid for school construction to entice voluntary district mergers. I have serious concerns that will result in us potentially using very limited state resources to potentially be investing in the wrong school buildings.
Well, I
If
think
we're in a multi-year transformation process and you don't know what the end state is.
I think that what this is attempting to do, and I think it needs to be clarified in terms of the sort of bonus stuff and all that, is to say that is one of the things that a district can get more points for, or whatever, however you want to say it, to if they've gone through a voluntary merger. So it's not the only thing. And so I do think that if there's been enough work done on the agency side that's coinciding with what's happening on the school district level, then we're not going to be in the position where you're funding the wrong projects. There's a limited amount that they're going to be like prioritization involved.
Okay. I would suggest that you contact Senate Education and request to be heard. They are presently working on this section.
Yes.
Don't wait for them to invite you, because
I've
a lot of
been
this
and
is,
requested.
Maybe you need to.
I think that would be helpful because I literally was in the room last week and requested to provide testimony.
because a lot of this is really not our jurisdiction. And I'd hate to be in the position where we feel that we need to make changes. So I will drop an email to the chair and ask him to have you in before they send the bill to us. Okay. You have questions?
Sorry, one last question / comment. I do think we did a lot of work when we were on the task force on the prioritization and the bonus incentives. And you've done a lot of work on those too. So I think bringing those out to the light of day, letting folks take a look at those. But we said this back then, and I think it still holds true. That is sort of the key to driving a lot of decisions.
It is, yeah. So I agree with you. I think that we've actually, it's almost like we've dusted off the work that we've done and say, remember folks, we actually talked about this really extensively and we're sort of almost relitigating it at this point. So I I'd be happy to share the work that we've already done on this, because I think we did some good work. I think we were quite thoughtful and deliberate about how we were going to be good stewards of these public dollars. And then I've already sort of spoken to this, but I think the assignment for the school construction advisory board, you would of course want to hear from those folks, but I work with them pretty closely. And when I saw this, I thought, I don't think that they can successfully accomplish this, particularly absent any resources, but I just don't think they're the right body. If you want this work done, I would recommend, again, this is work for the Agency of Education and it needs to be appropriately resourced. And it needs a longer timeline. That's very intensive. And again, I'll just sort of leave, I think you all get the message, so I don't want to keep sort of beating a dead horse here. I think we're at risk of undoing years of very deliberate and thoughtful work by sort of, fumbling at the 1 yard line and then failing to implement with fidelity. This is high stakes money. It could affect generational change in what our school buildings look like. It's a major investment. We haven't invested in a really, really long time. We don't want to fumble the implementation at this point after we've done a lot of work. And we've seen nodding heads, and I think they will understand.
It's the eggs. We don't want to break the eggs.
You don't want to break the eggs. I don't want to fumble the football. I don't want to break the eggs, whatever metaphor you like.
But I also,
We do want to move forward.
I also don't think this has to be an either or. I actually see a lot in this bill, a lot of the work that we've already done.
Yeah.
It's just, you're right that it might not completely jive with the vision that you have, but I do think we can construct something that might work for everybody.
And I think it is, as I said, I'm not going to speak to the funding around the state capital bonding. That is out of my lane. We didn't do that before though. So I do think it's important to have a little bit of a history lesson from maybe some of the folks in the building who were involved in that program when we had to sunset it, and some of the lessons learned that we may not want to repeat. And I do actually appreciate that there are elements in 955 that are answering some of those sticky questions that we have. How do you use supplemental spending? So there is a policy choice there, and I sort of appreciate that they brought it to light. I can stick around if there's any additional questions, but yes, Senator Cummings, if you can please request that we do get some time in the Senate Finance, and we have been, I would say, pestering them on almost a daily basis that they need to be hearing from us on many of these issues. Okay.
Sounds like, all right.
Okay, I'm going to exit over here, but I'll stay in the room if needed.
All right. That gives us a lot to work on. Scott Baker. Or how, yeah, the whole treasurer's department
Great.
can do their thing here.
Yeah, like
You
that.
just have to torch here.
Oh. I didn't even notice. No, that's good. Taking up the advice.
Yeah, thank you. That's under.
We have to-
But they will present their comments.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. For the record, David Sher, Deputy Treasurer.
Scott Baker, Director of Debt Management.
Thank you for having us this afternoon. We have spoken to the committee once already broadly about state bonding capacity. I'll note for the record, the treasurer hasn't taken a substantive stance on the bill as passed by the House, but we have been providing technical advice throughout the process about bonding capacity. We've worked in consultation with our financial advisors on that, passed that information along to the legislature. We've also been talking about some of the risks involved in taking on additional bonding with respect to credit rating and cost to us borrowing, and some ways to mitigate that risk. And some of that advice does appear in the draft of the bill as it stands. I think we want to be helpful to the committee in terms of what you are looking for. I know, Scott, do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, so we do have a slideshow if you want us to go through it about where the $50 million came from in the bill. We were in as David mentioned, we were in a couple of months ago talking about the CDAC process and how we get to the bonding capacity. When this bill was being developed, we were asked how much additional capacity the state could take on. So we ran some scenarios. I guess we can go.
There's a slide on our website.
Oh, they
don't see.
I can.
That's all right.
So on, my apologies for that.
All over, David. Thanks to far. You do get.
As we mentioned, when we're. Something.
Yeah, the copies.
Oh, yes.
So while we're getting it over, so you can look at it on your computers, we do have paper. Old fashioned paper. Look at it well. Sorry, keep going.
When we were in here before, we went through the CDAC process, we talked about capital debt affordability advisory committee, looking at scenarios. We ran scenarios this for the biennium of 100 million, 108, 123.18, and 172. And 172 correlated to the administration's 10-year capital plan. It was $86 million per year, so we ran at 172. Ultimately, CDAC decided on 100 million or $50 million per year, and there were a number of factors that was based on primarily the administration. Basically said that they couldn't spend more than that. The projects weren't getting done. So we settled on, they settled on 2-year recommendations, $100 million. They met again in this September, affirmed that. So that is what is in the capital bills right now. The next slide basically shows the authorizations, growth. You can see, starting in 2014, we went to 2012, we went to the 2-year, the biennial recommendation. It's continually gone down. Down to 100 million. One other factor is this last bar in the green shows the amount of authorized but unissued debt. So there's $192 million of authorizations for projects that are not being built yet. If everything was going forward, if all projects were going forward right now, we would be issuing an extra $192 million just to get those done. Right now, our current outstanding debt is about $550 million. If everything was getting done, it would be an additional 192 on top of that. So that's another reason that CDAC kept their recommendation low. We have a lot of options.
Does anyone monitor? I mean, we just did at some point. You look at the unclaimed property and we write it off.
Yes.
That's a good point. That's a lot.
So there is a subcommittee. If you look at the capital bill every year, there's some transfers and reallocations of projects that didn't spend all the money or are not going forward. Some of that money gets reallocated to other projects. There is a subcommittee in House Corrections and Institutions. They look at projects, I think, that are maybe 3 years old or so. Make sure they're still going forward. The administration looks at that as well. So our office doesn't, choose the projects. We just do the bonding.
You just okay.
So I just trying to read this, make sure I'm reading this graph correctly. So in the let's look at the 2026, it's 192.5 unauthorized or authorized but not issued.
Correct.
Does that include, did that cumulative or is it?
That is what we have right now, projects that are not bonded for.
Okay, but does
Yeah.
that all come from 2026, 27, or
It's
would some of it be from 2024, 25?
Yes,
Okay.
going back to several capital bills. When we go out and do a bond issue,
Yeah.
there are, we go back
So it's cumulative.
several capital, yes.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure I was reading that correctly.
Can I ask a question? So amount authorized but not and unissued.
Mhm.
Does it mean that we've authorized it in the capital bill,
Correct.
but it has never been issued, like the project has never gone forward?
Or the money, right, the money hasn't been spent yet.
It hasn't been spent. And is it projected to be spent, or is it just something
Yeah.
happened and the project is no
As long as
longer
the
a thing?
projects go forward, we will bond for it. And again, if a project, if the administration or the House of Corrections, if they look at old projects that are not going forward, that money will be reallocated.
Okay,
Go into
Okay,
the
you
subsequent
haven't let
capital.
those bonds.
Yeah.
Yet,
Correct,
authorized to
right.
borrow, but you haven't, so, but that's where our potential legal obligations.
Right. The projects have already been in previous capital bills. They're just,
Do you have a reason why that seems to be amplifying over time, that we're seeing a more and more amount authorized but unissued relative to where your chart starts back in 2006?
yeah, I mean, especially during the pandemic,
It started.
yeah, it started before that. What we were told was a lot of the projects are major projects. There's several years that it takes to spend money. But the departments want to make sure they're getting the funding. So they'll put in for the funding, get authorized in the capital bill, but it takes several years to do that.
Can you just to give me an example, some of the projects that might be part of that 192 authorized million that haven't gotten kicked off?
I know one large one, the correctional facility, I think there's 15 million of that in there. A lot of. Yeah, I mean, we can get a list. Finance and management actually has that full list. I mean, we can put it together.
Okay, but the correctional facility would be.
That's one of them. That's one example, correct?
And that's been being talked about.
John Gray's itching to say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you look at the latest capital bill, for instance, in the calendar, you're gonna see about $10 million in reallocations of bonded projects this year. And if you look to that section, you'll see a host of projects from which they're reclaimed EV, you'll see $1 million to EV charging. So it compiles over time, and there's a mandatory clawback period. So they don't stay out there forever. You can reallocate capital projects after 3 years, and you're required to reallocate them after 5 years. So they couldn't stay there forever unless you kept notwithstanding the law, basically.
So as I mentioned, so we were asked just to look at how much capacity the state could do. So the next slide,
Okay, but we were told very specifically last year by the treasurer that we could not put the full faith and credit of the state. So these were going through municipal bonds, or have you changed? They were going through the municipal bond bank, not the state.
correct,
Okay.
right? Well, that would be the intended plan. If we followed the Rhode Island model, it would be using,
Well, see, we haven't heard the Rhode Island law, so maybe you could help us figure out who could talk to us about the Rhode Island law. But it's come up twice today.
so Michael, yeah, I think we did. We got testimony on it last year, like last year.
Yeah, okay.
And I think there's a couple things that, so yes, I think John's a great resource. Scott, I think you could give like a very broad
2
overview
minutes,
as well.
just to refresh everyone.
Before you do, I'll just say that there's a couple questions that are, I think, inside of that question, which is one, which is what you're getting at is like, how will this bonding be issued? And what that is getting at is whether or not this will count as net tax supported debt, which means will it be counted against our total bonding capacity by the rating agencies? And so the numbers we're about to show you go to that question about how much could we add to the state's debt burden before you start tripping over the guidelines about what's too much and therefore more likely to increase the cost of borrowing.
That's That's based on debt per capita.
We can,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
that is.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Yeah.
And if,
Yeah,
and
we'll
if,
get
and
into
if
those ones.
we fall out of good graces, that means we don't, our,
Our
yeah,
Our ratings- our
our
ratings
rate goes
drop.
up, which
interest rates.
over 20 years on a couple $1 million project is more than decibel dust.
Right, and if our rating goes down, it also affects entities in the state that rely on moral obligation. of
It's like having a
bond,
pet.
they'll be sent
Credit report.
each day.
Yeah, okay.
So what we were asked to do is just to look at the current CDAC guidelines and how much additional capacity we could issue before we are out of compliance with those guidelines. So those three major columns, those are the three main debt metrics that CDAC has considered over the years. The first one, debt per capita. The top shows the top box shows the previous 10 years metrics, and the bottom shows the projected 10 years going out. And this assumes $50 million per year issuance, which is the $100 million per biennium. So the current CDAC recommendation, but it also folds in the authorized but unissued amount over the next few years. So
Can you at some point send that to Charlotte? I'm not seeing it on our committee page. Maybe somebody closer could read that, but the print's pretty small.
Yeah, it should be in
Oh, it's
your.
in here. All right.
yeah, we didn't send this. We weren't sure we were going to go over this or not, but we can.
Still pretty small.
It is. Yeah.
This is better on the paper.
Yeah, I think basically what it shows you though is this is the current scenario of issuing 50 million per year and rolling off the authorized but unissued over the next 5 years. And so the bottom, the first box there, debt per capita, for the 10 years going out, that shaded portion shows that we are out of compliance with the state guideline. And that CDAC sets the state guideline at basically the median of all AAA rated states. We benchmark against AAA rated states. That's how we want to, right now we are AA+, AA+, which is the next highest rating below the AAA. But we generally price as if we were AAA. We kind of want to keep that and eventually
Really
get
like
back
to
to
be
AAA. Right. Debt per capita, although we're out of compliance, we're a small state. We realize the population is small. It's also not the most important debt metric that the rating agencies look at. It's one of them, but they generally realize that we're out of compliance because of the size of the state. And we're kind of, if you look at all 50 states, we're kind of right in the middle of the pack. So it's not terrible.
And we pay our debts.
We pay our debt, right? The next column is debt as a percent of personal income, based on, basically shows how much debt taxpayers spend for based on the personal income. You can see at the current $50 million per year, there's no shading there. So we're in compliance with that. The state guideline, CDAC sets it at 1.8% of total personal income. That's kind of a volatile number among all AAA rated states. But we kind of pick one right in the middle, sort of on the high end, but 1.8%. The last column, debt service as a percent of revenue. State revenue, kind of an indication of how much the state can afford to pay on debt. They set that at 4% of the state's revenues, set the guidelines. That has recently been lowered from 6%. But again, you can see that for the 10 years going forward, we stay within the guidelines. So this first scenario shows the current authorization.
Debt per capita. That's also problem.
So the next slide is basically issuing 100 million per year or 200 million for the biennium. Again, we were just asked to look at scenarios. You can see issuing 100 million per year, the metrics go up. Obviously still out of compliance with debt per capita, but we remain in compliance with the other two metrics. You know, they're not looking quite as good, but we're still within the guideline, the current CDAC guidelines. The third slide, we went up, showed 150 million per year. And you can see, you know, we're out of compliance with all three of those debt metrics. So what we were asked to do was look at just capacity under the current guidelines, and that's why we came out with 100 million just based on the guidelines. This hasn't gone through CDAC or, you know, or anything. This is basically the scenarios that we ran. So that's where the additional $50 million per year came from.
Second year.
Hey, Madam Chair, have you guys tried to do some kind of a estimation or a projection of what would happen to our Moody's ratings if we did the 100 million or the 150? I mean, so we're out of compliance, but is that necessarily a drop in the rating?
At 100, we stay within the guidance. I mean, we always look at, you know, a lower rating, how much it would cost us, and we do that, and, you know, it's anywhere from 15 to 25 basis points roughly. We can figure out that cost. You know, we don't know exactly what the rating agencies are going to do, but benchmarking against the AAA states, we feel like if CDAC stays within those guidelines, we're in pretty good shape. If we go forward, you know, if we go more than that, you know, we're at risk.
So you have concerns with 150 million?
Yeah, and I think we just say the data shows that we'd be more likely to have our rating lower. Like that cost of state significant.
Clarity. This is the 150 million additional to what we're doing now? Or
That would be 100, it would be the 50 that we're authorizing plus an additional 100. So that would be
Okay.
cumulative.
so right now, the bill is authorizing 50.
And,
Okay,
right.
and you did, and the scenario then is if we did 100 or 150 more, those are the other two options. It gets a little tenuous at 100, but at 150, there should probably be red lines on there. There's probably more reading than we'd like to see on that.
Yeah, yes, we would be at risk.
Yeah.
Can I just clarity on that, because I'm so good. The bill at H955 right now has 50 million in there. That's that's in the intent language.
In the intent line.
Yeah,
It doesn't.
that's your first scenario, is the
Yes.
50 million that's in the bill.
That's equivalent, as I understand the intent language, it's not in the actual statute, but the intent language, as I understand it, is an additional 50 million from what we're doing now. So that would really be, if this, translating to this, it'd be scenario number 2.
Oh.
Projection of 100 million per year.
Are we doing 50 million for school construction bonding right now?
Nothing for school construction.
Yeah, we're
There's
not-
50 million in the capital
We're talking about total bonding capacity.
The capital bill itself is only 50 million.
per year.
Oh, okay, I was confused about that.
Okay, then that's not
You're right.
that's not what I was understanding. So we are already doing the 50 million.
Correct.
Scenario one
Schools
is,
for everything.
this is current.
So if we bonded 100 overall, everything. And that, which would be the proposal to put 50 million additional in to school construction. That gets us to the $100 million chart. If we were to do $100 million for school construction,
I guess it's.
which considering I remember being given a piece of paper 2 years ago saying we needed $375 million for urgent health and safety needs in our schools. Isn't a lot compared to the need that's out there. Okay. So the bill is looking at that second chart of being able to bond 50 million above what we are presently bonding overall.
That's right.
Okay, that's the prison project, or does that include that line of bonding that's been approved and not spent, that big high line?
Right, that's assuming that that is being issued.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if some of that went away, it would free up some capacity.
Correct.
All right. Okay,
And again, so these were just the scenarios that our office ran.
Okay. It's just helpful to know what the base line is. All right.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is about process and this. The difference between, I think your charts get to it. The difference between approved or authorized. It's authorized bonding versus issued bonding. So once it's authorized, you've passed it and said, yep, you can go ahead and build this thing and issue bonds, but they're not issued until all the plans are set and everything's ready to go. And then the state goes out and issues the bonds, basically goes to market and, right?
Right, so we issue generally about once every year, 18 months or so. There are timelines where you spend the money and there's some tax rules you have to issue by a certain time. When we go out and issue, part of that will be for reimbursement of money that was spent, and we'll survey all the departments and say, okay, out of the projects that you've been authorized, how much will you spend in the next 6 or 12 months? And so we will go out and bond for anything we have to reimburse, and probably what we expect to spend in the next 12 months.
Yeah,
If we're not going to spend it, and then in the next 12 months, we don't want to bond for it.
yeah.
So,
Okay, so if there is a project that is estimated to cost $70 million. And so we authorize 70 million, actually 70 million is over ours, so 7 million project that's going to cost 7 million. And we authorize it, the legislature approves it. And then after planning is done, it comes in that there's some other funding sources and the project is less, or it's going to cost less. Say this is actually could happen. And it's only going to be 5 million. So you're going to issue $5 million, and then that 2 million is authorized but unissued. Right? The 2 million difference between 5 and 7. And that's the case for schools and local municipal projects too. They have to authorize the full cost of the project, but they don't necessarily issue all those bonds. Is that correct?
for municipal,
Yeah, for local projects.
um,
Maybe it's
Yes.
the bond bank I need to ask.
yeah,
but-
yeah. I assume it's, but yeah, that would be a question for the bond bank.
That's my
'Cause-
recollection, city council.
That's my recollection too, because
Bonds are passed.
the issue is how do we capture that in the bill, because there's like a two-step process of being it authorized by the voters. Voters say, yes, let's spend $25 million on building this new wing or renovating something. And then there's the issuance of the bonds, which in the interim between the two, there could be state aid that gets supplied that makes it lower, cost lower. There could be grants that they get. There could be so all of these things, the project would come in lower. So a $25 million budget, yeah, it never happened,
Yeah.
but a $25 million authorized bonds could turn into 20 million issued bonds. And the thing that I'm trying to figure out in conversation with John is do we need two votes at the local level? One for authorizing the project and one for issuing the bonds? Or is it just okay to authorize the project at 25 million, then maybe state aid takes that project down for the local bonds to only 20 million? Maybe they get $5 million in state bonds to cover part of it.
I think they might do up to 25 million.
Yeah, so
In the case you don't want to go back and do a second vote and
right, so it's one vote, but then it's just a matter of explaining it to voters that this project might actually only cost you 20 million. Local voters only 20 million, because we're gonna get other funding sources.
That'll be very important to explain.
Exactly, so that's how
You have to stay.
John and
true
I
to
have been trying to figure out.
What you were warning for the.
Yeah,
So you
right.
can't change the product.
no. And usually sometimes you do step projects. We're gonna do this. And
Right,
Yeah, all right. But for this committee right now, the question we're looking at is where are we gonna get the money for school construction? And it looks like, and I assume this is based on the economy staying relatively stable, not a major correction in the market, et cetera. But barring something big happening, the question is how much bonding capacity do we have to put into school construction? And then, as I understood it last year, but this may have changed, the towns would bond, the towns would assume the debt. And then if we came up with $5 or $10 or $20 million extra in the general fund, we would help buy down those bonds. Is that still what we're talking about?
Right, so basically the Rhode Island model, so, there's a, RIBEC, an entity in Rhode Island Housing and Building.
Yeah.
Corporation, so they actually issue the bonds, similar to schools right now go through the Vermont Bond Bank, that's how they borrow, so RIBEC would be similar to the bond bank. The schools borrow, the bond bank would borrow, loan it out to the schools, and what Rhode Island does is, subject to an annual appropriation to pay the debt service on a portion of those bonds, and I think they're paying 20% for it. So, and again, because it's subject to an annual appropriation, they're not going, they're not stating,
There's no
they're not
guarantees.
pledging that they're doing it. The rating agencies have not included that debt on the state's books. They're included,
Okay,
where this 50 million would.
Yeah, this is 50 million of state bonding
yes,
backed by the state
yes.
that could supplement local bonding.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah.
I think it'll be helpful to note, Act 73 was trying essentially to do the Rhode Island type approach to ensure that bonding is held locally, even if the state itself is going to provide aid, be done annually, subject to appropriation right, trying to follow a similar model to ensure that that local debt doesn't count as net tax supported debt of the state. And then the proposal in 955, it maintains that debt service subsidy model, but it supplements it. So you still have the concept of certain pieces of aid that are intended to produce the effect that the local bonding does not count as the state's net tax supported debt. But if you're leveraging additional state bonding capacity as another form of aid, that is not the Rhode Island model, and that doesn't state. That's what is trying to fit within the CDAC box.
Okay,
That's the-
so we presently have, I was
Yep.
going through the municipal bond bank, we weren't
Yep.
doing the state.
You could have both under this.
This would do an additional up to 50 million maybe
And
in state full faith and credit.
Exactly.
bonds.
it's like the old capital bill program pre-moratorium in ways where you would outright have state geo bonding to support amounts of projects.
So there could be two, well,
And you could have two forms of aid. You could have both a debt service subsidy and, you don't have to, but you could have both. It's possible.
So a project could be supported by a whole bunch of different things, like it
Yes.
could be if it's a $50 million project, it could be 5 million of state bonding. It could be some 5 million of supplemental spending, it could be $5 million of state aid, direct aid. And then the rest, the 35 million, could be local bonding.
Right.
So it'd be like a multi funding
it would
source.
be one of Vermont's creative finance programs.
Yeah.
I'm trying to read body language because I don't want to do something that would make the people who are responsible for minding our money uncomfortable. If we lose our credit rating, if we tend to be fairly conservative. We always balance our budget. And I don't want to put that at risk. Especially for something that at this point is so fluid. How many schools, we have no idea how many schools or how much construction is going to take to do anything. So we're talking about how we're going to pay for it before we know what it is. That's not, but this does give us a cap, I guess, on, along with, I'm assuming there's caps on town debt. So this would give us a best case, highest, maybe not the highest risk. If we did 100 million, that would be a high risk. But again, based on at least the present economy.
Yes, I think that's correct. And I think John nicely summarized that there's sort of two separate mechanisms as
Yeah,
opposed to
okay.
two. I think
That's
one,
information.
yeah, that I think one thing to keep for the community to keep in mind is with the Rhode Island model, it's not, we would want to be careful that we're constructing the way we do it. And I believe, we've been working on that. We'll continue to work on that as questions come up, but we want it to be as close as possible to what Rhode Island did. We can't sit here and guarantee what the ratings agencies will do. And so holding tightly to what has worked for other states is a relatively safe way to make sure that additional debt wouldn't be
Would
used as tax
negatively
supported debt
impact everything else.
for the state. Yeah, exactly.
If we had another one to replace elevators. Okay, all right.
I think we need one of those standing desks.
I think, yeah, I think we've done as much on this as we're going to do this afternoon. And we have several amendments that are being proposed for the miscellaneous tax bill. I'm trying to get the proposers in because I think we'll get to it tomorrow. If we can't, they're not unfamiliar. I don't know that Senator White will try again tomorrow, but she has mailed out a proposal to give the 80% to Downs to the
In the pilot.
in the pilot fund. I think we got the reason until we're sure there's more money coming in, we could drain it. Cause we haven't put a couple things in there. There's another.
Isn't there something in the T-bill about pilot?
And then, yes, the T-bill takes 3 million out of pilot and gives it to local roads, and we're not gonna do bonding anymore unless you wanna do this.
Want to now do the T-bill?
That's in there.
This question on
Yeah,
that. So I think I got an answer to this earlier, but the allocation of the local option tax, it seems like clearly an appropriations question.
Yes.
Okay, so it's coming to us on the miscellaneous tax bill, but I wonder if this is really an gross determination.
well, I was told this morning that everything we've done is accounted for in the budget. So if what we've done gets amended, then the budget has to get amended. That was the renter credit, all the yield bill stuff is in there. The other one is from Senator Brennan, and
He's asked for building, so he couldn't come.
he couldn't come, but this is not, Senator Brennan moves the amendment by striking out 21 through 23, that's Fish and Wildlife fee setting, and the reader assistance heading, and inserting in lieu of thereof with the Department of Fish and Wildlife fees. So he's deleted 21, 22, and 23. This is after hearing from Ledge Council Brady. This was where they were made whole in the budget. They got the money that they were anticipating getting from the either bird watching or fishing access fee, whatever you want to call it. They got the money they were gonna make. And they're getting caught up in the sense fees, the administration of the legislature. They've got the money. We voted 7-0 to do this. They have to come back next year and present their fee and get it done as part of the appropriation. So we've had that discussion. Unless somebody wants to change their votes, let me know. But we have talked about both of those, so I don't.
I honestly didn't follow that discussion more or less the first time, so I'd love to hear what Senator Brennan's point of view is on this, but that's not saying I'm changing my vote. I don't quite know what the game
Okay,
is
well,
on
we
this.
haven't been able to get him, probably, I think. The probes, I don't know why, I don't think they met today. For a little while. Okay, the other thing, and Michelle Boomhauer is here. We are supposed to get the transportation bill out. We
Yeah.
have 2 amendments. And Damien said you could do either one. One is we go forward with the bill as it came to us, which anticipates going to hybrids and combustion engines
Eventually.
eventually. And that's in there because that's where we're going. Heads up, but nothing's enacted. And the other one was. And I'll see if I can find Damien's.
But that's what's in the bill right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's in the bill.
Which doesn't act.
He said if we don't, he can strike out sections 11, 12, 21 and 22 and 23 and 44, which strikes out going past anything other than a mileage fee for EVs. And those, as of Friday at about this time, is where we were.
Since Michelle Boomhauer is here, does the administration have a position or opinion on those 2 options?
So the administration's position, which Patrick stated last week, was that we are prepared to move forward with all electric mileage-based user fee while continuing, I think the secretary also stated this, while continuing to look at and come back and report on future options for other vehicles. I believe that Senator Westman had one other option that you haven't mentioned. But he may have left the building. I don't know. So,
So our question is, what do we do to vote this bill out?
For answer, I interpret as you're not supportive of the enacting of the mileage-based usage fee in 2030 and on congestion vehicles, but you support the continued study of this to come back and it's you on that path.
yeah,
And that's where the house is as well. That's kind of where I am too, but I can go either way on this. I don't know if it's where I need to draw a line.
Okay, I'd send it to you, Lichtenstein.
I'd like to support what's in the bill that came to us from transportation. I think they did a lot of work. I think it's thoughtful and I'm ready to vote on it.
Senator Mathers.
Yeah, I'm in support of the MBUP on your battery electric EVs and your plug-in hybrids down the line after stopping short of gas powered vehicles. Full 100%, because you get into the realm where right now you have a cap of $178. And then you get to the gas powered vehicles, and even a vehicle over 10,000 pounds GVW wouldn't apply to the MBUP. So then you don't have the, I'll say in quotes, luxury of the cap to be spending way more money on an MBUP or on your gas line. And then on top of that, you're already paying elevated registration fees. So I would be in support of EVs, plug-in hybrids being part of the MBUP, stripping off the gas powered part.
Did you keep, oh, okay.
What if we just stripped out the cap?
And their reader assistance.
You know, I make support it.
You already pay gas. It makes no.
Education fund.
Why would you have an MBUP on a gas powered vehicle when you're at 1.4 miles? So.
Because not every
What?
gas.
That has to do with the
So then you get penalized for having an inefficient gas
All
powered vehicle.
Vehicles use the roads, so why not make all vehicles pay for
Yeah,
it?
you don't pay for using
But
roads.
see,
You
okay,
agree
well,
to do something else.
what's in the
But a
transportation?
gas
Yeah.
powered
Get it out
vehicle
of
is
this.
gas tax. That's what pays for the
But,
road.
but that's what this is trying to
These are the
replace, is to try to replace the current system that we have to
I-
get everybody on
Gotta
the
come
same
to an
system.
equitable.
I totally
Okay.
get that, but every day running around the road, pickup trucks that are over 10,000 pounds are gonna effectively not have, if there is no cap, which there is a cap in this bill, you would be getting pretty screwed over as somebody who would drive.
You're just gonna get a
you're
credit.
not
You're gonna get a
being-
credit.
Yeah, you would.
You're not
because
being
you pay-
charged based on your weight, which is a nice thing.
Yes, you are,
How's that?
because a 3/4 ton truck pays $192 a year to register it.
Well, and
And
Or-
then you also pay the gas tax.
heavier vehicles do have a harder impact on our roads.
Which is why you pay the registration, but then you would then come around and pay for the gas tax, which if there's a cap in place at $178, you will spend more in the gas tax than you would that.
Well, isn't there a thing in the bill that that says that the agency will do work to try to bring in to the program those vehicles that are over 10,000 pounds?
I just think those vehicles that are not paying anything towards the maintenance of the roads, EVs, should be paying a mileage-based user fee. And in conjunction with that, a plug-in hybrid, because they're also running off battery electric within that vehicle.
But doesn't the bill have a thing where they can, for gas powered vehicles,
Get credit.
there's a credit,
Yes,
so.
well, if you, yeah, because that was the little old ladies that drive 5 miles to the church and the grocery store. If they don't go through enough mileage for $156 in gas tax, they can submit a form and get a rebate. It's so much easier to just pay the gas tax, but
There we go. There we go.
I agree with that.
everybody pays the mileage tax and every car gets a credit and how much is that?
Yeah,
That's not true.
exactly.
That's not true. Out of staters will not pay this.
But
They'll pay tax, they'll pay
Yeah.
tax.
we need to keep working on that. I mean, that's,
This is all why I just
Yeah.
think we should have this discussion next biennium, and that's what the administration's asking for.
And see what's
Don't put it
happening
back
with other
it's gonna go
states,
back.
because every state has this problem with out-of-state vehicles.
Right,
So
yeah.
eventually the consensus will develop.
And then
We're not
those
the only
people like
state.
me, I don't think it's a problem.
But no other state.
Well, and I mean, I think I might agree with you. At first I thought it was a problem, but then,
I don't think it is.
I mean, when I travel out of state and buy gas out of state, I'm
You're paying
paying
fuel tax, that's,
exactly, and I'm not. Yeah,
I don't think the out of state's even a problem.
so I think it's important that we stick with the
There's no
contract,
gas
this in the
tax.
bill
Yeah.
and keep working on
Okay,
it.
I'm,
This is.
we know we
Silly.
need to take out everything in the bill that has to do with the purchase and use tax, because we've already done that. And we have one other section,
The jet fuel tax.
the jet fuel tax.
We all agree on that,
Yeah.
right?
And
I
then,
don't know, we put a mileage-based usage fee on airplanes. It's a great idea,
we need to help the T fund. That's what this is all about.
with battery electric vehicles.
I like
paying
driving on
that
smooth
fair
roads.
share.
Where we get to it with this. We're-
Like, just go there and plug in.
then.
We do have Patrick here.
We have, no, I'm looking for a graph.
We need to check to see if Damien's around.
We do what?
Well,
Damien.
I'll just say, I put this bill
He may
in,
not
something
still
very
be.
similar. Going back to 2016, because we're still
Whoa.
studying it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we like to do
There
a
was-
That's funny.
where we're going.
Straw poll.
Who supports just doing the EVs at this point?
It's
And plugins?
Studying gas.
And plug-in hybrids? Because they're also a battery.
Is that in the first
Yeah.
part?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so who would support, not going to combustion engines?
Fully.
Study combustion like.
Oh, come on, Scott. Stick those.
Okay.
The engineering, the engineering.
If I was gonna design it, I would design it very different.
That's not saying we're not gonna go there.
Yeah,
It just means
yeah.
the next biennium, the legislators, when they have more information.
The leaves that hang.
We should all be on the same system.
We should
It
all
will,
be on the-
it will,
I
it
agree.
will create fewer.
Right now, we don't
Dividends.
have the votes. I want to make sure.
Be with us.
Are you?
Be with us. Be
Where
with
are you, Madam
us.
Chair? I'd love to hear that. Cause I could go either way on this. I can see it
I
on
could
both
go
sides.
either way,
Oh, boy.
but I.
So,
think
but I
agree with the administration.
I am uncomfortable with the awkwardness of all the forms in and out. I'd like to be able to start, I think, with
Smaller.
the EVs, which are the issue. Then you might want to go after my cute little Honda.
Does that get plugged in?
No.
So you're
It
fine.
gets really.
I don't
hot.
like it.
But I mean, no, eventually, the
My thought is if
Low
you plug your
mileage,
vehicle
high
into the
mileage.
wall, you're.
low mileage.
But the decline in the gas, in the revenues to the transportation fund are actually more attributable to more fuel efficient gas powered vehicles than more EVs. So you're not paying your fair share.
Me.
He is.
He is.
Well,
The chair problem.
Okay, and I don't know, at 32 cents a gallon, I am paying $156 a year.
I'd like to see a long enough period to get other states involved so that we have things to measure against as opposed to leading on our own and then finding that the world has adopted a different standard, a different methodology, and then we've got to pay to fix what we didn't get right the first time.
To start mandating
Okay,
it.
I think we know where we're going. We can argue, but I want to have the drafter here. If we can get him tomorrow, no one's twisted my arm and said this bill has to be out today or last night. And make sure that everything we need to do is done in all of these deletes, because I'm a little uncomfortable with voting on an amendment with a lot of routes that I'm not sure, so. We will do that tomorrow. We will be starting at 1, right?
1:15, but is that ambitious? For an 11 o'clock floor time tomorrow with all you have?
Yeah,
A lot of stuff on there. Well,
we've got the budget, that shouldn't be too bad tomorrow. We've got the yield bill,
Yield bill.
which shouldn't be.
Are we gonna skip the miscellaneous tax and then wait until?
Might,
tomorrow?
no, we would like to do miscellaneous tax.
Okay.
too.
What are the amendments? Are we as a committee gonna see the amendments to the realized tax?
I just told you just two.
There's the
Here's
one
one.
on the pilot fund, and what's the other one?
What's this?
That's basically, we agreed with the House on Fish and Wildlife.
Oh.
And they tried to get it out in appropriations and failed, so they're coming back and they're gonna do the floor. It's the same, we had the discussion on the pilot fund today on the floor. It's, you wanna risk having nothing in there in a couple of
So
years.
as a committee, we're not supporting either of those, is that what's happening?
I am not hearing any, unless somebody's changing their vote, we did both of those 7-0.
I'll be curious to hear more about the natural resources part, the wildlife, fish and wildlife. sorry.
Fish and
On the floor, you mean?
Yeah, man, whoever. Yeah.
You have to confuse things on the transportation bill. There is another option that we could do. It means we would not be able to amend it, but we could move it out without recommendation. And then that would be the approach. to do
No,
it.
we don't
Just
do that.
just to complicate things later in the day. Sorry.
It's called coward.
Come on, Tom.
I was looking it up.
There will be
We will go on.
machinery and equipment tax credit.
Yeah, I mean, if the committee really couldn't.
What is that?
Local option tax.
Very,
Way up 312. I support
For
it.
your-
Yeah, I don't think we actually debated it. and we don't-
Corporate tax break?
Well,
Kind of been hijacked.
the testimony
Are you gonna
is,
share it with us?
we're taking
It'll be in the
3
calendar.
million out. We
It'll be
put
in
some
the
kind of a
tomorrow
municipal
calendar.
tax.
Yeah, there is a conflict between what's in the transportation
Yeah,
bill and.
Well, then let's
other
talk
people
about
are-
info.
There would. there
Where are
wouldn't
you
be
voting on?
money
Well,
left.
but even if it's the three of us, okay?
So there's 3
Yeah,
million,
exactly.
we've approved that.
We
But if we had another, if we give another 5% to
Yeah,
the tax.
that takes about $3.25 million of revenue out of the pilot fund every year.
And so you don't know if
Anybody watching this on YouTube?
if the sales, this is all sales tax. If the economy, if we start seeing more online sales and
Which we are, with the Wayfair decision.
yes,
That was a
but
long time ago.
that is also all based on the economy.
People are ordering more online.
Many people are not buying as much as they did a year ago. And if the price of gas keeps going up, we may have a really good transportation fund. But we could fund out. We have a really bad,
Yeah, it's not.
yeah, sales
Part
tax.
of it is price sensitive.
Little sale.
Yeah,
Part of it's price sensitive.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's complicated, says.
We're happy to sit and explain
That's
it
right,
out.
yeah, that's right. But if we start buying and traveling less, then we will have gas tax go down.
Correct.
If we start buying less, then the sales tax revenue in both the ed fund and the pilot fund will go down.
I'm just gonna keep driving, so I can
And trust
get
me,
the roads better.
you're taking away from them that
I
I'm
don't.
not giving them.
No.
All right,